stored in this file that we've included in our program here. We'll talk about that more later, but if you want to know what other values you can use in there, go to a browser, and if you search for limits.h, then you can easily find a reference to this that will show you. So we're using like int min and int max, but there are others here that you can also use. So what if you want a bigger integer? Well, you can change int by typing long. You can say long int. Let's call this L value equals, and some huge value that would not fit in an integer, and let's do cout, and
Marius. Yeah. So înveți tu C++. Explica cum să bagi.
And L value and endler. And let's see if that works. So if we run this now, so we build it and run it, and yes, these values match. If we chose an int here, I don't think they would match. Let's try it, because we'd be overflowing the amount that you can store in an int. So this is not the same as this, but if you use long, then it works. Now there's also a short int. Let's call it s value, and you can fit quite small values in this. I'm not sure exactly what. Well, if we look at this file here, limits.h, we've got short max here. So this is the maximum value that you can fit in a short int. So let's go back to Eclipse, and we should be able to fit that in there. And let's just do a cout on that. I'm going to copy this one and put s value, and we'll compile it. Project build to get rid of that warning, and let's just run it. Could have just hit the run button actually. So yeah, that works. So most of the time you can just use like int and you don't really have to worry, but if you've got a really big number you have to worry, and sometimes you want to save memory if you've got like a whole load of ints and then you want to use a short value, or there might be some other reason why you want to use it. Another thing you can do here is you can use the size of operator to find out how much memory these types actually use. So we could say here size cout and size of int, let's say, and then I'm going to type size of, and this is technically an operator, like this is an operator. I guess equals is an operator. Never really thought about it, to be honest. Plus is certainly an operator. This is also an operator, although it's got multiple characters in it. It's not just one symbol. But we call these things operators. They kind of operate on data somehow. And this one requires 2 brackets like that, or that's how you most often use it. And then we type int in there. Or you could also type a variable name in there, like value or s value or whatever. Let's try this though, endler. And if we run this, it's going to say size of int 4. What's that for? Well, it's 4 bytes, or in other words, it's 4 times 8 bits, which of course is 32 bits. So the maximum value you can fit in an int is going to be roughly, not quite exactly for reasons that we will get into, 2 to the power of 32. It's going to be in that region. Or actually a little bit less than that, probably. I don't know. Okay, yeah, so probably half as much as that, come to think of it. Because basically we need 1 bit to represent whether it's signed or unsigned, it's negative or positive. But we will talk about that more in the future. So basically, yeah, there's 4 bytes allocated here for an integer, and we could do this, a similar sort of thing with, let's try it with short int, and let's type here short int and see how many bytes are allocated for that. So we'll run this, and we see that the short int is just 2 bytes. So the maximum number that you could represent in this would actually be 2 times 8. Well, 2 times 8 is 16. And because we need 1 bit for the sign, it's going to be 2 to the power of 15, I suppose. If I'm losing you here, don't worry, I'm almost losing myself. But it's just important to know that there are sizes to these types, and you can't.
Așa, mă auzi acum? De ce int-ul normal și long int are aceeași memorie? Că uite, dacă dau cu size off...
Că 64 de bits.
Păi nu trebuie să fie 8 long int atunci? Că mi-arată 4.
Nu știu, până long e mai lung.
Long int scriu atunci.
E long.
Am pus long. Păi și care e diferența dacă folosesc?
Fără int.
Păi...
Long.
Păi merge și cu int, dacă... 8. Da. Și dacă pun numai long, ia. 4. Păi... What the fuck? Ia. Că zicea băiatul ăsta că dacă pui unsigned, îți ia mai puțină memorie.
E doar pozitiv.
Păi da, dar ce? Îți ia mai puțină memorie? Nu.
Nu știu.
Păi văd că tot 4 de la int, unsigned, long, e. Tot 4. Dar zicea că îi mai trebuie un bit ca să le stocheze pe alea cu minus.
Sometimes you need different
Da, dar tot 4 mi apare.
size type is the basic gist here. You also can have, for example, you can use signed and unsigned with these as well. Like I can type unsigned int. Let's call it u value equals, and then it can only be positive, it can't be negative, because we could put a negative value here. This is a signed int, meaning we can have negative or positive values in it. That's the default. So the default is a signed int. But if you type unsigned in front of it, then you can only have positive values in, and that means you can store a bigger number in it, because you don't need to use 1 bit internally to represent a negative or positive sign. So sometimes those are useful as well. Let's just output that. It's not going to do anything very interesting, but let's just run it. So with a signed int here at the top, we've successfully represented a negative value. You can't have a negative value in an unsigned int, you're going to get gobbledygook. That's the whole point of it. So that's not matching this. So if it's unsigned, it can only be positive, but you can fit a bit more into it. So sometimes that's useful. And a lot of compilers let you type just long instead of long int, like that. In fact, for all I know, they all do. So often you see just long or just short by itself. So yeah, we've covered integer types. We've looked at limits. We've looked at the limits.h file here. This is actually on your hard drive. There's probably a file called limits.h that we're bringing in with this kind of include symbol, but don't worry about that. We've looked at size of. So it's, you know, even if you just watch this video, it's better than nothing, because you're gonna kind of come to understand these different types as we carry on programming stuff in this course. But if you can be bothered, it's definitely really good if you just practice declaring long and short ints, signed and unsigned ints. Try putting values into them. See what happens if you put a value in that's too big for the type. Try using size of to get information about the type. And
What the fuck? Pe aici ai valoare.
maybe Google limits.h and just have a look at what's in there, and that's good for the moment. So this will feel probably like a lot of information, but the take-home message here is really just that we've got long ints, ordinary ints, short ints, and they can also be signed and unsigned. So you often need to pick the appropriate type for your particular program, but most often you just use int. So practice that if you can be bothered. And in the next tutorial, we're going to look at some more types, or actually I might get into the details of exactly why the negative value of an int, maximum negative value, is not the same but negative as the maximum positive value, if you see what I mean. And yeah, and as always, I'd say if it kind of goes over your head, don't worry, because we're going to get on to more practical stuff very shortly, so do keep watching. So that's it for this video, and until next time, happy coding. Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. Welcome back to C++ for Complete Beginners. And in this tutorial, we're going to look at floating point variable types in C++. So again, I'm going to give you quite a lot of information in this tutorial, and you don't have to memorize it all. The important thing is just to try playing around with some floating point variables a bit, just so that it's kind of in your head. You don't really need to have all the exact details in your head all the time. So we've already seen that you can write stuff like int value equals 6, and you can output that with cout like this. Value, let's put an endler there and a semicolon, very important. So if I run that, we should get 6 appearing down here. But what if you want a decimal point in your number? You can use a type called float. So let's type float, I'll still call it value again, I suppose, equals, in fact let's call it f value, because I'm going to have a different floating point type shortly. Let's say equals 76.4 or something. Then we can output it in exactly the same way that we did with an int, but the important thing is that float can have a decimal point in it. If you're in some part of the world other than the UK or the USA, you may be used to using a comma instead of a decimal point, but as far as I know in C++, it always follows the American kind of standard of having a point here. So let's run this, and let's change this to f value, in fact, for float value, and I'll run that. And here we should be able to see 76.4. Now there are a few things to note about this. One thing is that cout, it can output numbers in one of two basic formats. One is kind of the normal notation, which we call fixed, where you write all the digits out like this, and the other is what we call scientific notation, where you have like a single digit number, point something or other, and then times the power of 10. And sometimes with big numbers, cout can decide to switch to scientific notation, and we don't want that, and I want to stop it happening here. So what I'm going to do, and you'll see how this works in a minute, is under where I put include iostream, and before using namespace standard std here, I'm going to type hash, whoops, that was the wrong key, hash include and io man ip, like that. That stands for input output manipulation. And now immediately after cout, I'm going to have one of these chevron things, the insertion operator, and I'm going to type fixed, like that. And this is a value that's defined in this file, which we're including here, but we're going to look into includes later on. So basically, if you just type this stuff, it should work, and don't worry about it too much at this stage. So let's run this, and it will look pretty much the same as before, really. You'll notice we've got a 2 on the end here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the thing here that I want to show you is you can also have this as scientific, like that. And if you run this now, then we get this in scientific notation. So this actually means 7.64 times 10 to the power of 1 in this case. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? So we've got 7.6 times 10, that would be 76. So 7.64, and this E stands for exponential, and it actually means 10 to the power of 1 here. So sometimes it will display it like this just anyway, if you've got a really long number, but I'm going to change this to fixed so that we always get the numbers written out. Now, yeah, let's run that again. So we saw that we had a 2 here, and the reason for that is you can only store a certain amount of information in a float, or in any variable for that matter. Float allocates a fixed size of memory, and if you want to see what that is, you could do what we did, I think, in the last tutorial. You could type size of float, like that. Or you could also use size of on your variable. So we're typing size of and then round brackets immediately after it, and then that we're putting float. Or we could put f value in there, it would also work. And if you run that, you will see that a float on this compiler, at least on this system, it takes up 4 bytes. So there's only going to be a certain amount of information you can store in 4 bytes, of course, there's a limit to it. And with floats, usually you reckon on getting something like maybe 5 or so. I think it's about 5. How many have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, something like 5 or 7 significant digits. I think we've got 7 here basically. But after that, you're just going to have garbage being output. So you can only store like the number of actual digits that matter in here. So starting from the beginning, we've got 7, 6, and then 4, and so on. and then a bunch of zeros because it's exactly 76.4. After that, you can't rely on your float for storing numbers. You can only rely on it to store these, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 digits or so. I think it's normally 7. So if you want more precision than a float, you're going to have to use a different kind of variable. And in fact, let's just output even more digits here, because you might wonder why is it actually stopped at the 2 here? Well, the 2 was garbage anyway, but why didn't it go on and output loads of garbage after that? Why have we only got this number of digits? And the reason for that is cout actually has a number of digits that it will output by default, a number of significant digits. And again, I think that's 7 or 8. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, we've got 8 digits, 8 significant digits here. And this could, I presume, vary on different platforms, different compilers. You don't have to carry this information around in your head. And as you can tell, I really don't, although I've done C++ for many, many years. But we can alter the number of digits that we can output with cout by using set precision. So I'm going to put another like chevron here, as I like to call it, and I'm going to type set precision, and in round brackets after that, let's type 20 so that we get 20 significant digits being output. And again, to use set precision and to use fixed, you've got to include this IO manip here. So you've got to type this stuff near the top of your program. Let's run that and see how it looks. This is even worse. So now, yeah, we've got 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 digits that are good. So float has correctly stored 7 digits, but after that it's just garbage. And we're telling cout to output a total of 20 digits here, but most of them are just rubbish. So let's try that with a different type. If you want more precision in your program, you can use double, which should store something in the region of something like 15 significant digits, approximately, something like that. Let's try double. D value equals 76.4. Let's try that again, actually, same value, and we'll output cout, and let's just copy this because it's easier than typing it again. Paste it in here, and I'm taking care to keep the indentation correct. It's very important. And let's output here D value and see how that looks. So I'll run this program, and you can see here that the double it gets much many more digits correct. Like, so we've got a load of zeros here which should be there, and then after a certain point it's garbage, just as float was. So we can make this a bit more complicated. Let's try typing, I don't know, 1, 2, 3.45678 and let's try that same value with a float. So I'll run this, and we'll see that with float we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it loses the plot. But double is doing a lot better here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and a load of zeros. So we could put more decimal places or more digits before the decimal point and double. If you really want a mega precise number here, and you have to bear in mind that most of the time you really don't need to use that many significant digits, not even in sort of scientific work. People tend to go overboard with using significant digits, with using numbers after the decimal point. You normally don't need that many for most purposes, but if you're working with money or something and you're doing lots of complicated transactions, then you certainly do want as many decimal places as possible, I suppose. Whether double will be enough for financial software, I'm not really sure. But if you want even more precision, you can use long double, and let's call this L value equals, and let's have something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I'm not sure how long it'll do with that, but how it will do with that. But let's see. Let's copy this again, and now let's try L value, and let's run this. So we've done pretty well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And after that, we've got some garbage instead of what we should have, which is zeros. So L value is a long double value. It does pretty well with storing lots of significant digits. And again, if you're interested, let's just change this here to say size of float. This is a really good thing to do. Just type this out yourself. Get the size of these values. Let's say size of long double, and I'll type in here. We could just type L value. You can use either the variable or the actual type. Let's try that and see how many bytes we are allocated for a long double. So a long double is using 16 bytes in the computer's memory just to represent one number. So that's a lot of bytes just for one number. So the take-home message from this tutorial is just that you've got float, which is fine if you don't need too much precision, double, which is very commonly used, and long double, which you don't see very often for like sort of mega precision. So that's all you really need to remember. And it's handy also to remember this, that you can do set precision and fixed if you need to change the way Cout is outputting a number. And of course there's other stuff you can do to format numbers, but we won't go into it here. There's no signed or unsigned double, at least not with this compiler, and I don't think with any compiler as far as I know. Yeah, so you've got these basically these three types. So that's it for this tutorial, and what I'd strongly recommend is that you just try defining some variables of these three types: float, double, long double. Also try size of on them to see how many bytes they occupy on your system. You might get different results to me because it can potentially depend on your compiler and on your kind of computer you're using. So this isn't, the number of bytes allocated to a type is not necessarily fixed in C++, although you're probably usually going to find the same results as me here, like 4 for a float, 16 for a double, and I think it's 8 for a 16 for a long double, and I think it's 8 for a normal double. But try typing that out yourself, just try using it a bit. You could like add them together if you want, see how that goes, and yeah, and Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial we're going to look at 3 more primitive types in C++. We've already seen a bunch of integer types and some floating point types, and we're going to finish off this little section by looking at 3 more very useful types. Well, 2 more very useful types and 1 that you don't really use that often, or at least I haven't, but that you should know about anyway. So the first type we're going to look at is bool. Bool is named after a guy who I think his name was George Boole or something like that, and he was a mathematician who did a lot of work with logic. And the Boolean type, which has this keyword bool to represent it, can store either true or false. Let's type b value, and we can set that either to true or to false. And if we output it, we get a little surprise. Let's try this with cout. What we get is actually we get 1, and that's because in C++ 0 is equivalent to false and 1 is equivalent to true. So we can also set this to false. Let's run that, and we get 0. So 0 is the same as false, 1 is the same as true. You can actually put stuff like numbers in there and it will accept it, and it will regard that as equivalent to true. So it's outputting 1. But don't do that, because it's really confusing, so it's best not to do that. It's best to stick to true and false, but it is quite common in C++ to have something that evaluates to 0 or 1 and to regard that as being equivalent to true or false. We're going to take a bit more of a look at Boolean values later on when we look at complex conditions in C++. But for now I just wanted to mention this. So bool is a type that you can set to true or false basically. And by the way, it's possible in some compilers you might have to put bool and true and false all in capital letters to get it to work. That used to be the case in Visual C++, but I don't think it's the case anymore as far as I know. So another type I want to show you is char. And char it takes up exactly 1 byte of computer memory. So it's often useful just for that reason. If you want to allocate a specific number of bytes, let's type c value equals, and well, let's set this to 55. I want to show you something that at first appears totally perplexing here. Let's do cout c value endler, and if we run this, so we put 55 in it, what we actually get is 7. Now, why is that? Well, char is kind of partly intended to to represent single characters from something called the ASCII character set. So let's go to a browser here and let's type in ASCII. I should do it ASCII, and we'll look up. We'll go to this ASCII table link, or we could go to Wikipedia. It doesn't really matter. Let's see what's at this link here, and we can see that well, a byte can only represent 255 distinct values, and we see here we've got a table of well, this is a table of, by the looks of it, 127 different values. So those are like yeah, plus we've got another bunch of weird characters here, up to 255. So each character that's commonly used in the Latin alphabet, like in American English or something, plus a bunch of other characters that are quite often used, have a position in this table. And if you output a char with cout, for example, if we put the number 55 in a char, we see that 55, that is the number that's used to represent the character 7. So not the number 7, but the actual character 7. So what's happening here is that we're putting 55 into it, the number 55, and it's outputting the character 7. So it's very common to actually put characters directly in here, although it is actually an integer type. And to get the actual ASCII value of a character in C++, the actual number of that character in the ASCII table. I'm not sure what ASCII stands for. I can never remember. American Standard Code for Information Exchange. There you go. Then what you do is, yeah, so we put the actual character in single quotes. So if I type 2 single quotes here and put 7 in there, and then I run this program. It's going to output 7. So it's really important to realize here that a 7 in single quotes is not the same as the number 7. This number 7 is literally a number. If we put it in single quotes like this, it's a character. It's a symbol that happens to have position 55 in the ASCII table. If we actually want to see the actual number of the actual position of this character in the ASCII table, we can put int here in cout just before C value. This is called casting. We say that we're casting a char here, whoops, to an int, and that will cause cout to output this as though it wasn't an integer. So if you run this now, we'll get 55 again. So you can put any character that's in the ASCII table, basically anything from the American alphabet plus a load of other characters, let's put G in there, into a char. And you can store numbers in a char, but you have to be aware. Let's just get rid of this int so that we can actually see the G, because that's a bit less confusing. It says G. But a char, you have to be aware, only can store a number. It can be minus 128 up to plus 127. That's 256 different values if you include 0. So yeah, 256, that's right, isn't it? I think so. Yeah, okay. So let's output the size of a char, because as I say, the size of a char is particularly important because you often use it to allocate a certain number of bytes in memory. Size of char. Let's try this and run that so we get it to build. Oh, we've got an error. What did I do wrong? So I've said, whoops, I should have put cout there, not char. Let's run this. So when it builds, the error goes away. So size of char is 1 byte, in other words, 8 bits. So you can only represent quite small numbers in that, from -128 to +127. One other type that I want to just show you is wchar_t, which is a very strange name. And this is intended actually for representing a greater range of characters than you can represent in char. So it's sometimes useful for that. Again, you could put you could assign it to a character like that. Let's output this and just see what we get. Endler. So I've never had to use wchar_t much, but it exists if you need it. So again, we've got an error because for some reason I typed the wrong thing there. Should be cout. There we go. So we're getting the position of I guess within the ASCII table here, but we could actually typecast I to a char. We could cast it to a char, and then we'll actually get I. But you can store more characters in wchar_t because it's the size of it's bigger than a char than you could in a char. So it's sometimes useful, I guess, if you're dealing with Unicode much and stuff like that. Let's write here wchar_t. So I'm going to run this, and there we go. It's actually taking up 4 bytes in the computer's memory. So to practice this, I'd recommend declaring some Boolean variables. Try setting them to true, false, 0 and 1, just because the act of typing it out will help to fix that in your mind. Declare some char variables. Try setting them to numbers as well as characters, and see what happens if you try to put a large number in a char, more than 127, and you'll see what kind of problems you get there. You'll get gobbledygook if you go over 127, or you have a number that's less than -128. And just declare a wchar_t, try outputting it. Try changing what cout displays with char or with wchar_t by adding that typecast to a char or an int in front of these values, and see how that affects the output. I'd recommend just trying all these things, just because it will help to fix it in your memory. And we're going to be using, no doubt, bool and char later on. Probably not wchar_t because it's just not so commonly used. So that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding. Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. Welcome to another C++ for Complete Beginners tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to look at the if statement in C++, and this is a very exciting point to have reached, because finally we can begin to make our programs interactive. So I've got a basic C++ program here, and to illustrate the use of if, I'm going to create a little program that asks the user to enter a password and checks if that password is correct or not. First of all, let's declare a string, and let's call this password. And I'm going to set that equal to some password that the user is supposed to enter. Let's just put hello, although of course you should never use that as an actual password in real life. Now I'm going to get some input from the user, and first I want to prompt the user to enter their password. So I'm going to say here cout, and the this is I often call this just a chevron because it looks like a chevron, but it's actually the insertion operator, which is often called put_to for short. So I'm going to start calling this put_to from now on. So I'm going to type cout put_to space, and let's say here enter your password, and I'll just put like a little sort of angle bracket thing within the string here, just to make it look a bit more like a sort of prompt. Let's have a space after that as well, and then let's output flush. Then I'm going to get the user input with cin. So let's say cin, and I'm going to type the extraction operator, also known as get from. So cin get from, and now I need a string in which to store the input that the user enters. And best practice in C++ is that you should declare your variables pretty much as close as you can to where they are actually used. So let's type string input here. So this is where I'm going to use this to store my user input, and I'm declaring it really close to where I'm using it. In the early days of computer programming, and for a long time afterwards, variables were always declared at the top of the program, the thinking being that you could see what variables your particular file used, but that's no longer a good idea, because the structure of programs has changed a lot these days, and for other reasons. So you should declare them as close as you can to where you use them now. So let's type cin input, and firstly let's just see what that actually looks like. I'm going to do something which I highly recommend that you do frequently in your program. I'm just going to type cout, and I'm going to output that actual value that we've got like this. So let's put input endler, and I'm also going to I want like a couple of single quotes around this, just so I can see there's nothing, no like space characters on the beginning or end or anything like that. So let's put here within double quotes I can use a single quote like that. So I'm just going to output a single quote before I'm outputting the stuff that the user entered. And I also want to output another single quote afterwards. So that's going to look like this. And I need my another put to just there. Okay, so let's run this program before we go any further. So it says enter your password, and I'll just click in the console and enter let me in. Hit return, and we can see this is what the user entered, and these single quotes just enable us to see that there really is nothing on the start or the end of the string. So I'd recommend, like, when you write a computer program, always try to check every step. Excuse me. If there's anything that you're not completely sure about, use cout to output some of the stuff that's entered, or the results of calculations that you've done in your program, and check that it is what you expect. And if you build up programs step by step like this, creating a step, outputting the values of any variables that you're not totally sure about before proceeding to the next step, and run your program at each step, then it really helps you to develop programs a lot more rapidly, because you don't end up with a massive pile of code that doesn't work and you don't know why. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to check to see if this input, we can get rid of this, and I want to check to see if the input matches this password here. And to do that, I'm going to use an if statement, a conditional statement in C++. We're going to have a lot of fun with this in the future, doing a lot of different things with it. It's extremely useful, one of the basic building blocks of computer programs, and it looks like this. And it follows a pattern that you often see in C++ in general and in many programming languages. That is, we have a keyword like this, if in this case, and following that we have two round brackets, open and close, and we're going to put stuff in those round brackets. And following that we have an open and close curly bracket like these. So we put the code that we want to run if the condition is met between these two brackets, and we're going to put a condition between the round brackets after the if keyword. And notice that's a very similar pattern to the whole main function here. We have this extra thing here. We have what we call a return type of this function, but then we have, well, in this case it's not a keyword, it's a special function name, main, but it looks pretty like this. And following main we have two round brackets, and we have these open and closing curly brackets which have code in them, and it's a similar pattern here. So what do we put in if? In if, we're going to say we want to compare this input. Let's type the input here, input. Compare the contents of this variable with the contents of this variable here. And to do that, I'm going to type equals password here. So this whole thing is checking if these two things are equal. Why is it two equal signs instead of one? Well, it's because these two equal signs have a different meaning to this equal sign. This equal sign is taking this value and assigning it to this variable, this string. This equals, the double equal sign, are checking if these two things are equal. So one is assigning a value, storing a value, and this is checking a value. So they're two different things semantically in terms of meaning, and that's why they are a different symbol. So this whole thing here is called a condition, and this is going to evaluate to true, like a Boolean true value, if these two things match, and if they don't match, it's going to evaluate to false. So whatever you put in the condition here for if, it has to ultimately always evaluate to true or false. So in here we can put some code that's going to be executed between these two brackets if this evaluates to true. In other words, if the two things are identical. So I'm going to type here cout and password accepted. And let's just put a endler there. Now if the password isn't accepted, then if the password doesn't match this, I want to take some kind of different action. Let's have another if down here. Let's type if. So we have the round brackets and then the curly brackets. And in here I'm going to type input not equal to password. So to get a test for non-equality in C++, you use this exclamation mark, which you read as not. So this is not equals, exclamation mark equals. So I'm saying if the input is not equal to the password, then I can take some action here. Let's type cout access denied and endler. So this condition this if statement will execute it will execute the contents of it will execute the code you type between the curly brackets, however many lines you have here, if this condition is true. And this if statement here will only execute the code between the curly brackets if its condition is false. Well, if its condition is also true, I should say, because if the input is not equal to the password, then input not equals password is true, and therefore this if statement will execute. So the if statement only executes if its condition evaluates to true. This is true if the input and password are equal. This is true if they are not equal. And by the way, we're going to see a nice way to handle this situation where you want to pick between two alternatives, probably in the next tutorial, but for the moment we'll just work with a basic if. So let's run this program and see it working. So I'm going to click run. I've already compiled it. I'll click in the console here and let's type some garbage, hit return, and it says access denied. Let's run it again, and I'm going to type this time hello. I hit return and it says password accepted. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. You can also use ifs with integers. It works well with integers as well in exactly the same way. And if you want to practice this, I'd recommend that you try typing out a similar program to this, something a little bit different if you like, or else the same program. Try to type it out just kind of without looking at this code, unless you actually have to because you can't remember stuff, but try to look at this as little as possible and try to get this program working. And also try to do this with an integer. You don't have to use if on input that's actually being entered. You can use it on the values of variables that you've hard coded in your program. So I don't have to get, for example, the input from the user. Here I could have just assigned it a value with an equal sign. So try to get this program working, and try this with integers as well. Make up a little program that uses at least one if statement using integers and see how you get on. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next one we'll probably look at if-else, and we'll look at some more stuff with conditions. So join me again next time, and until then, happy coding. Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this video tutorial in the C++ for Complete Beginners series, we're going to take a look at if-else, and we're going to take a little bit of a further look at conditions. Else.
There's going to be a hearing tomorrow to see whether or not there's any legal basis why you have to stay here.
I'm not crazy.
If it was up to you, would you like to leave the hospital tomorrow?
I'd like to leave the hospital tomorrow because I've got things I gotta do.
What brought you into the hospital?
I turned myself in on a 5150 because I felt like killing myself.
Okay, so you came here voluntarily.
So I could stop from killing myself.
And what was going on that you felt like killing
It was
yourself?
3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep. All the same thoughts kept racing through my mind over and over and over again. I just wanted them to stop, period.
Have you ever made any suicide attempts?
Oh yeah, I have. A couple of them when I was 19.
Okay. Are you usually able to ask for help when you start feeling like that?
No, I was never able to ask for help before.
Okay, so this is a new thing.
This is a
You're
new
coming
thing.
into the hospital.
Yeah, the way I
Okay.
came in here is unlike any other way I've ever come into a hospital. Asking people to please help me so I do not kill myself.
Сейчас, товарищи, вы погрузитесь в гипнотическое состояние, и вам будет произведено антиалкогольное внушение. Сядьте поудобней. Расслабьтесь. Закройте глаза. Спать. Сон. Глубже. Приятней погружайтесь в сон. Спать. Алкоголь является ядом для нервной системы и психики. Особенно при вашем неважном состоянии здоровья алкоголь является ядом для всего организма. Глубже в сон. Даже сама мысль об алкоголе вызывает у вас ощущение неприятной реакции. Глубже спать. Глубже. Каждый из вас берет в руки стакан. Стакан с водкой. Попробуйте понюхать. Попробуйте понюхать. Поднесите к носу. Поднесите к носу. Нюхайте. Отвратительный запах. Отвратительная реакция. Спать. Спать. Сон. Сон. Спать. Легче. Легче. Легче стало. На счет 5 выйдите из состояния внушения. Однако отвращение к алкоголю останется непреодолимо. Сейчас легко, приятно. Раз, два, три, 4, 5. Почувствуйте себя легче, свободнее. Я наливаю водку. Отвратительную водку. Отвратительный запах. Водка, 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 водка.
Da? Așa, și uite, și-am scris cod până acum, doar că cum fac, de exemplu, uite, am aici, de exemplu, dacă apeși A pe tastatură, asta am făcut, știi că eu știu de făcut, dacă apeși A pe tastatură, știi, acționează cu acțiunea 1, da? Da, și am făcut cu if, dar, de exemplu, dacă vreau să, acum să continue povestea, da? Cum fac să pot folosi iar acțiune 1? Sau, na, pentru litera A, de exemplu, cum fac să folosesc chiar? Trebuie să scriu acțiune 2? Și tot așa, păi până la sfârșit am... Nu pot să fac sub program? Adică gen în if, dacă fac în if aici.
Fă cu subprogram switch-uri dacă vrei și cu key input, să aștepte input, nu un anumit buton. Hai că să dai input la un caracter.
Păi am pus că caracterul A, dacă l-apeși, te ridici de pe pământ, ceva de genul. Așa e ok modul ăsta, știi? Că nu vreau cumva gen să apeși Enter, că n-ai rost. Uite. Am făcut cu string.
Aoleu.
Vezi, uite acolo, string acțiune 1, apoi te pune să introduci ce acțiune. Și dacă scrii litera A, dă la acțiune 1, adică acolo cu if ăla. Cum pot să fac să folosesc? Sau să pun string acțiune 2 și tot așa, dar după aia le încurc, cred. Dacă fac mai multe căi. Acțiune 1... A, nu bă, știi cum fac? Fac string acțiune 1A pentru opțiunea A, da? Gata, m-am găsit, dă-te pui mei, dă-te pui. Punem aici, dacă merge. Cum fac ca după ce bag acțiunea să dea pagină nouă? Gen să se șteargă ce era înainte.
Caută ăsta. Screen CLS.
Și unde pun?
Ce?
Unde pun screen CLS?
Păi caută pe Google în pula mea, că nu zic exact ce să scrie.
A, ci că să bagi cu cout. 50 de caractere. Da.
Ce?
Stai că acum încerc. A, dar atunci mi le bag în fundul paginii, pula mea. Gata, v-am găsit. Fac cu cout string 5, n în paranteză. N în ghilimele cu bară înainte. Clear. Char. Am măsut de ajutor. Așa, bă, Marius, încă o întrebare. Poți să bag un if într-un if?
Da?
A, bine.
De ce crezi că n-ai putea?
sincer, nu cred că mă mai duc la facultate dacă termin la buget.
De ce?
Costă 40 de milioane.
Păi, putea să nu mergi la de medic?
Păi nu mă duc la aia de medic, mă duc la aia de asistent, you fucking cunt, că aia de medic e 60 de milioane. Medicină simplă, la taxe e 60 de milioane. What the fuck? You fucking
Păi
gay?
facultate în pula mea, la ce te aștepți?
Păi da, în pula mea, dar toate facultățile, numai la muzică, la instrumente și canto, costă 55 de milioane. Dar în rest,
Așa, și?
maxim e 33 milioane, 30 de milioane sau 28. Mai e una asta, educație fizică și sporturi montane. E una 30 de milioane și una 35. 4 chestii, abar. La medicină sunt fucking expensive as fuck, mai e.
Păi știe că se bagă acolo lumea să ia șpagă.
XD. Dar nu vă, că să-mi bag pula dacă nu învăț pentru la buget. Că 40 de milioane e scrum, vai. Îmi iau o mașină cu banii aia, coaie.
Da, și de ți-ai mașină 40 de milioane și bagi 100 să o repari.
Da, mă, dar...
Că faci cavou de Dragoș cu
40
BMW.
de milioane ori 4 ani, să zicem că unul face 4 ani la taxe. Cu aia chiar că ții mașină.
A, bă, dă-te în pula mea de joc.
Ce te joci, mă, cu
Cuphead. Aia un boss așa de bullshit, băga mea și pula.
It's just like Dark Souls. Cai, uite la drept, 28 de milioane, fuck sake.
Păi nu, acolo te faci notar și ești fomist.
Da. Dar holy fuck, bă, nu știam că e așa de scump, mai imagine. Fuck, yes. Before termin post zicea, bine, asistent medical tot ajung în pula mea. Iau salariu mai puțin ca unul cu facultate. Și-s văzut mai shitty, no? Uite playbook-ul post zicea la lor. Dacă zici la unul în pula mea că ai stat la buget toți anii la asistent medical, la medicină, e altă viață cu aia.
Morți mătii de boss.
Holy fucking Jesus Christ. Dude.
Educația superioară nu trebuie să fie gratis.
Păi nu trebuie. Cine a zis? Nici o școală nu e gratis, nu. Dar nici fucking atât.
Pula mea, uite-te în America, $50.000.
Băi, ei iau mai mulți bani, mă. 60 de milioane în România.
Omule, atâta cred că face unul pe an acolo.
Păi 60 de milioane facem și noi pe an. Care? Bă, cu salariul mediu din România, nu știu dacă poți să-ți plătești pe an cât să strângi medicină la taxe.
Putu-te în gură.
Dai seama, mă, că la medicină se duc ori aia care au învățat ca sparții de au intrat și
La medicină merg toți căcații de oameni în pula mea că ai să fac bani.
Sau au bani.
Numai căcaturi de om la medicină.
Ce bani, mă?
Cred că unul din 20 se duce acolo să ajute oameni.
Da, normal, cu aia, what are you fucking gay? Crezi că eu mă duc la asistent medical să ajut oameni? What the fuck is that? Eu mă duc să-mi fac treaba. Bine, că rezultat e ajutând oameni, ok, that's another story. Eu nu mă duc să ajut oameni. That's my job, but no. Nu mă duc acolo că hurdura, I want to help people. Fuck off. Fuck off.
Tips Fedora.
Fuck off. Cum? Bă, e cringy să zici așa ceva, bă, mi se pare cringy. What the fuck? Mă duc undeva să ajut oameni. That's... De ce la balneofizio kinetoterapie e mai scump? E 45 de milioane. Dar măcar faci 30.
Futuți! Futuți!
Doctorat, masteratul e mai ieftin. E 40 de bani, nu. E ieftin ca medicina. Cât asistența, tot 40 de milioane. masteratul poți să-l faci la toate. E la fel ca la medicină. Pintius, nu știu dacă vorbești cu noi, că nu te auzi. Deci, holy Jesus Christ.
My heart belongs to you. Time has proved a thing or two. One is the way that you look at me, and the other the way I stare at you. Fate is a date when I met you, babe. Just then I knew what's mine.
Și unde vrea să se vadă? Deci la muzică 5 de milioane. Fac să-i caca. Te învață să fii Kanye, fac să-i. Să câștigi lots of money.
Love has proved to me that youth and the gap together will be witness to see. Oh, I can't wait to make love with you. Time has proved a thing or two. What is the way that you look at me, and the other the way I stare at you.
Deci, holy shit, I'd better start studying, boy.
To make love with you, oh, with you. I can't wait to make love with you, with only you. I can't wait to make love with you, baby, with you. I can't wait.
Dude. Și de ce la voi nu așa spune? Deci noi ce pula mea învățăm ce învățăm voi? Învățăm life hacks. Noi învățăm life hacks de așa de scump față de la voi. Bă, eu de la anul ăsta fac practică în spital, fac sei. În 6 săptămâni. De 6-8 ore pe zi. În spital. Azi am învățat despre dyspnea, for fuck's sake. Dyspnea, și despre meme-uri. Despre respirație. Păi să-mi bag pula că eu citesc în fiecare zi cartea de biologie pentru clasa 11, să-mi bag pula. Într-o zi citesc pe toată. Eu așa fac în fiecare zi până o memorez de tot. Nu știu dacă merge așa, dar... What?
Dacă au listă cu bibliografie pentru admitere.
Da, au. Păi mi-am luat cartea. Cartea aia care o vedeai pe mine, la mine roșie. Mi-a arătat paginile, mi-a arătat exact ce trebuie să învăț. Mi-a arătat paginile, îmi plăcea în pula mea la ei pe site la medicină. Ți-a arătat paginile. Literalmente e cam toată cartea în pula mea de învățat. Nu e doar aplicațiile și nu știu ce căcaturi nu sunt, dar în rest e cam toată cartea. Poate o lecție nu trebuie, dar în rest e cam toată cartea că am văzut. Păi iau bibliografie de aia, mi-am luat cartea aia și aia vreau să o învăț. Trebuie să învăț și la liceal acum. Și eu oricum nu învăț degeaba pentru că o să mă ajute și la facultate dacă e la buget. Că dacă intru la... Dacă iau la testul ăla, am văzut că e cumva pe puncte testul ăla. Pe 39-40 de puncte parcă maxim. În fine, să zicem că noi iau 8 și ceva la testul ăla 9. Intru la buget. Dar dacă iau prea mic, intru la pulă. Și rămâne în stână.
Te faci tu tractorist ca Dragoș?
Nu, dracu, rămân la pozițială, fac sec, 24 de milioane pe an. E ok. Dar n-aș vrea la pozițială, fac sec. Aici sunt toți plebii, fără bac, care erau recomandați. Sau eu una de vreo, sunt vreo 2 de vreo 40 de ani. Oameni care poate nu prea le-a plăcut să învețe. Sigur m-a dat dacă fac facultate, da. Sper să intru și dai seama că gen dacă intri trebuie să-ți și menții locul și that's fucking... Not that gay, man. O să învăț cum am învățat în viața mea. anul ăsta să fac. Nu cred că mă mai angajez nicăieri. Să mă ajute că fac anatomie și la școală. Banii de la autoliv nu mai îmi plătesc facultatea. Cât dacă stau 12 ore în fiecare zi.
Marius, cum fac să fie, de exemplu, am if acțiunea 2 egal cu acțiunea 2A și vreau să fie și prima. Sau...
Ouă, bă,
Ce?
verticală.
Le-am învățat, bă, gen... în funcție de culoare sau ceva, că cad la... Impozitate expectorată de cineva, XD flag. Ce culoare are în shit, în funcție de boală.
Alb.
Nu e doar alb.
Roșu, clar.
Poate să fie și infectată, să aibă gen culoarea galben verzui, nu mai știu la ce, poate să fie traficat, poate să shit. Poate să fie și roșie, dar unele sunt de la niște pastile, poate să fie roșie, nu mai știu ce pastile, că nu mi-am notat. Sau poate să fie blood, da? Că sunt două tipuri, poate să fie red blood sau black blood.
Black Blood e la uscat. Ăsta, la pastile vă zice compusul activ sau cum se numesc pur și simplu?
Momentan la ce facem noi, la materia asta, facem ființa umană, deci nu prea ne dă detalii. Ne dădea și la astea, la pollen și a zis că nu trebuie să vă bateți capul acum cu ele pentru că o să le învățați. Dar îți dai seama că o să le știi. Nu știu dacă le învățăm anul ăsta pastile, așa. Deci l-a predat, bă, azi. Ce bă, Marius? Te duci la predat azi? Azi. Ce?
Sau ca asistent.
Da, te duci la predat.
Da, merg.
Da? Ce e cât... Am dat, îți dau mult. Dar cine te plătește, bă? Măsa și tasul lui Timi sau cine?
Da.
Dar gen e așa, la negru, nu?
Da, nu, că ei oricum fac ceva zi.
Ah, da.
Că au...
Before vine Anapu și mă bag la pânare.
Nu știu, eu pot să zic, boss, eu n-am făcut nimic.
Who knows?
Ăsta. Au un ONG și toate plățile sunt primite ca donații.
Oh, fucking Jesus Christ.
Sau nu știu dacă mai fac așa, că acum pe foaia scrie chitanță, poate plătesc TVA, habar n-am.
Acum poate vreau, poate să mai... Da. Gen erau unele, sunt vreo două la mine la clasă, care zic că au făcut curs de mediator social. Nu știu, și gen... Că ne-a întrebat proful de psiho. No, mai multe chestii, nu? Și le-au zis că au făcut curs de mediator social și ăla zicea că e ilegal în România. Pentru că nu există curs de mediator social, doar de mediator.
Probabil să postezi pe Facebook, pula mea.
Și numai niște anumite persoane pot să facă chestii de mediator. Foarte puțin. Și că ei au făcut
WhatsApp-ul,
curs
pula.
de mediator. Da, pula mea. Păi și pe mine m-au băgat pe
Ultimele 3 mesaje. 5 laughing and crying face emoji. 3 laughing and crying face emoji. 4 laughing and crying face emoji.
Da, mi-au făcut ăștia grup pe WhatsApp de clasă și holy și numai spam și mă triggereze și fac.
Fac referință la un string care e într-un if. Adică am aici if act 4 egal cu acțiunea 4a, dar nu-l vede, că zice e undefined, sau de interiorul unui if.
Îl declari în afară if.
Păi da, bă, dar după aia n-are sens. Ăla e interiorul la alt if.
Îl declar mai dinainte și când nu mai ai nevoie de el, îl scări. Așa.
String, așa. Da, gen dacă pun toate string-urile ăla. Merge?
Da, bine să te obișnuiești să le definești global, că poate scuzi memoria așa, uiți. Bine, am plecat, pa!
Deja, mă, da, hai, m-a plecat în vigilie, XD. Ce vorbă, Pintiuț, te memezi? Te memezi cu alea și eu trebuie să mă memez, bă. Eu nu vreau să plătesc 40.000 de ani. Că n-am, bă, bani. Înțelegi? Îmi dai tu, bă, îmi plătești tu facultatea. Plătești tu facultatea. Zi, bă.
Acum e undefined 3.
Da, bă, că te ajut, bă, zi ce vrei. Hai, bă, că am făcut tic, te ajut, nu? Vrei?
Pourquoi tu portes ce médecin toujours avec toi? Parce que je me fais soigner. Tu te fais soigner, qu'est-ce qu'il soigne? Comment dire la réalité? Et toi, est-ce que tu ne te soignes pas la réalité? Moi? Alors, il m'est égal.
Ce te joci, bă, live, ia să vedem. Unde ești? Ah, faci de alea, nu? Scrie acolo, măi, XD. Ia, ce
E clar?
Ia asta, da, full screen. Da.
Trebuie să declare că nu se scrie textul.
Dacă dau full screen, dacă nu dau full screen, nu. Dacă nu dau full screen, să ne dea. Ok. Isso eu
just what here.
Bă, trebuie să fac un plan apoi. Știi gen. Paint. Ca să fac acțiunile, ca și e greu să le faci.
Și ce faci, Baco? Tu faci site-uri sau ce că faci? Meme, jocuri?
Nu,
Ce
băi, joc. E că
ce faci?
la text, adică ai să alegi. Stai că ți-l trimit asta.
Și cu texte de alea, cum de ești în viață? Da, hai. Ha, 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 ha. Eat the fucking dick, you fucking cunt.
Bună.
Tai rar la un CPP.
Ce facem?
Ce meme?
Ran?
Cum descrii un CPP?
Ce meme?
Păi trebuie să bagi un video de acolo, să-l rulezi, nu?
Ce?
Păi trebuie să-l pui acolo și să-l rulezi, nu?
Să-l pui acolo și să-l...
Deci dacă vreau să trimit textul, să răspect.
Păi îi trimiți CPP-ul, nu? Și luăm persoana aia și îl faci, sau mă rog, îi trimiți tot programul instant. Trimiți tot folder, oricum nimic. Nu poți.
De ce?
Nu e aplicație în sine. Tu când dacă vrei să trimiți un joc cuiva, ce îl trimiți numai Excel?
Da,
Fuck's sake.
Da. Ce mai trebuie?
da, păi unele jocuri literally merg așa.
Fuck's sake, nu mai am argumente.
Nu-i trimiți doar exe, îi trimiți numai shortcut-ul la exe.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
Văzut, bă, nu mai e același reward acum pe World Tournament. Îți dă un ceva Super Saiyan Gohan Teen.
Ai Visual Studio Alex?
Nu.
Poți să le schizi în altceva asta? Hai că-ți trimit. Vezi aici jocul.
Nu, dar vi-l joc.
If-uri. Ia.
Hă?
Ai code blocks? Măcar?
Nu.
Aoleu, dar ce
Nu o să-mi pun. Meme Studio.
Acum exersez, bă, cu string. Și iau with.
Ce mă, ai team cost limit acum?
What?
World Tournament, așa-mi zice.
You fucking real prick. Eu am fucking lăr în echipă, bă, deci îți garantez că nu e.
Ia și îmi zice, what the fuck?
Cât e limita? Eu am un lr care e 99. Și tot așa am putut să joc.
Nu știu ce să zice, fuck sake, how do I...
You're fucking asshole.
Oh, nu știu. Bă, s-ar putea ca echipa mea să fie team cost mai mare. Eu nu pot să o folosesc? Ah, da, mă. Fuck. Am team costul mai mare că mi-am dat awaken la alea. Am team cost 246 și mai maxi 239,
Păi ce rank ai, bă?
160.
Am 190.
Și ce 190 ai?
Rank.
Rank? Cum să ai 190?
Ce?
Cum să ai 190?
Nu știu.
Cum să ai?
Ce? Ce?
Ce?
Ia la.
dracu să scot, să fac din costum aici.
Meme-uri noi, 2007, putem să vedem.
Acum e fix,
Da,
bă.
meme-uri de voi. E moldovean, toți vloggerii bă, moldoveni, holy fuck.
Da, să-mi bap, ce bă, Pituț, ești moldovean?
Te dracu, bă.
De ce bă, ești moldovean, mă? Ești moldovean, mă?
Păi da, eu n-am zis.
Uite bă că e moldovean, l-ai supărat pe Pituț. Insensibil ești pe alea. Ce anti-moldoveni ești. Ia, salut, bine!
Să pot, vreau original. Intro IRA. N-am primit asta?
Iar compilation, bă, Alex.
N-am dat așa ceva, uite ce-am scris eu.
Hahaha!
XP.
These nuts.
Ți-m intro anime-ul. Nu mai e bine.
Ai văzut pe Alex ce... For fuck's sake.
Zi.
Ai văzut ce expensive e med school?
Da.
Fucking hell, mă.
Și după aia oricum, până găsești serviciu și până termin medicina.
Băi nu, că serviciu îți găsești instant.
Nu cred.
Ba da.
Bă, da, tot îți ia 8
Cosmin.
ani.
La medicină îți găsești instant.
Deci, eu care fac
E nu ca doctor, dar îți găsești.
Te bat, bă, ascultă-mă. Așa.
Te bă.
Eu care fac informatica pe 30 de milioane, da? 28 pe an, da?
Da.
Și eu ce folosesc, bă? Folosesc un calculator care nu-l cumperi în fiecare zi și ce mai folosesc? Na, curent, să zicem. Dar tu care te duci la medicină și dai 60 de milioane și ai materiale, adică ai corpuri
Da.
care să le tai în pula mea, ai medicamente care să le poți băga tu unde vrei tu și chestii care costă bani.
Echipament medical, costum.
Da, ăla e, nu că dai tu bani că sunt ăia evrei.
Și plus că tu faci practică în spital, deci.
Da.
Da, nu merită.
Pe
Prea
voi
mult.
nu cred că vă duce dracu într-o companie de IT.
Ba, o să ne ducă. Dar nu de medicină.
Păi și nu cred că o să
Știi că
faceți
putem
voi
să
ceva
mergem
acolo.
în anul 2 în America.
Începe practică din anul 2 dipshit. Deci mergem în firme, literally.
Și ce faci acolo?
Păi nu știu, că n-am fost.
Mergem în America,
Păi
bă,
pe
cu
întreabă
Erasmus.
și tu.
Bă, mergem
Ce
cu
să
Erasmus. Că gen
Nu
poți
știu,
să
bă.
te duci în state cu Erasmus 6 luni. Adică un semestru.
Eu vreau să învăț, bă, lasă-mă cu Erasmusul.
Da, păi te duci acolo, îți bagi pula între americani. E și cetățenie. Da, bă, ce... Ești un neserios.
Ce fucking edgy e, mă, muzica asta.
Dragon Ball Super Gear.
Ca Dragon Ball Super
Ingen.
Ningen!
Ăsta scria ca opening la Black Goku Arc. Fac shake. Ingen fucker.
Nu prea merită să mergi la medicină. Stai 8 ani până să te angajezi. Sau la stai la info 3 ani. Banii acolo e. La fel. Bine? Nu, dar nu. Cât de asta încep. Nu încep cu 100 de milioane la început.
Dacă ești doctor, imediat îți dai salatul. Pentru că aia nu-i în funcție de ce faci tu, nu ai salariu. Dar bine că nu ești doctor, un doctor care o să învețe.
Dacă ești fucking super mega chirurg, la te numeri, te distrug. Plus bacșiș pe care ți-l dă ca să nu strici om. Că îți dai seama că mai dă ciocolată acolo, bă. Bă, doar nu știu. Cred că mă duc cu agility de fiecare dată. Păi da, ce fac, adică stau intri cu...
Eu mă duc mai... Mai multe engleză în melodia asta decât crezi. Prezento...
Very good song.
Like it's very good, eh? Asta voi ce ascultă, am mai știu. Aia să știu că mi-e good. ACD,
Ce vrei, bă, să te bat?
Dar de unde știi? De unde știi ce ascultă?
Și să știa, bă, uite.
Dar de unde știi ce ascultă, bă?
Că e stream pe YouTube.
Ah.
Își arată cu care acolo.
Dar dați că de asta, pe cât nu am aflat de beat song, space song, in fact, visual song. De asta e muzică.
On the bed,
Fun, fun.
Emoji, what is this stuff on me?
Boy. Da. E more? Ok.
Fac romanță.
Atunci nu cred. Poate nu e asta.
E epic, are animații interesante. Adică...
Magici mim, bai.
De art style interesant.
Da, și...
Era cu 120 atac. Stai jucat,
Dar mișcat în fiecare zi.
What the fuck are you fucking gay?
Nu mă scam neapărat în fiecare zi. Am intrat în fiecare zi. L-am login în fiecare zi. Nu-ți dai. Nu-i vina mea, băi. Măcar îi treci că logai. Dai rigoare. Nico. Hai bă, ce spune aia, bă. De la Pony Man. Aia dă vreo 2 level-uri de fiecare. Aia și bă, ignorantă. I maximize I maximize.
Miss me with that gay shit.
Fate is a date when I met you, babe. Just then I knew what's mine is with me all the time. No sex to distinguish the other from one. Love has proved to me that youth and the gap together will be witness to see. Lägger alla mina förtryckta känslor. Låt mig omfamna is. Universellt. Kilometer efter kilometer, uppställda på rad.
it difficult to tell reality.
statement only executes if its condition evaluates to true. This is true if the input and password are equal. This is true if they are not equal. And by the way, we're going to see a nice way to handle this situation where you want to pick between two alternatives, probably in the next tutorial, but for the moment we'll just work with a basic if. So let's run this program and see it working. So I'm going to click run. I've already compiled it. I'll click in the console here and let's type some garbage, hit return, and it says access denied. Let's run it again, and I'm going to type this time hello. I hit return and it says password accepted. So that's pretty much it for this. Actually, you have to, because you can't remember stuff, but try to look at this as little. Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this video tutorial in the C++ for Complete Beginners series, we're going to take a look at if, else, and we're going to take a little bit of a further look at conditions. So let's start by outputting a really simple menu, which is a very common thing to do in command line programs. So I'm going to say here cout, and let's have a menu option so the user can enter a number to take some particular action. Let's say 1 and add new record or something like that. Endler. And I want to have a bunch of different options. I'm just going to copy this to save time. Let's have a few of these. And let's say we can have delete record and maybe view record and search record, and let's have quit. So the idea is that there's some kind of database and you want to search it and view items and delete items and that sort of thing. And this is a menu that lets you do it. If we look at this now, that should look pretty good. Looks pretty good. We need to change these numbers here, of course. And one thing you can do in strings that's often helpful for lining stuff up, especially if you were to put the numbers here at the end, let's say, is you can include a tab in a string. And in C++ and many other languages, between double quotes, you can use these things called control sequences. And what they look like is you need a backslash, it must be a backslash, not a forward slash, and then you have a single character like that. And so this actually outputs a tab. You can also use \n to output a new line, and there are other options, but I think those are by far the most common. Also, if you want to actually output a double quote within double quotes, you can use backslash double quote to do that, because otherwise you couldn't put double quotes within double quotes. But anyway, let's put some /t's in here, some tab characters. So I'm going to stick them all after the numbers. So each one of these / control sequences, they're only a single character, and often they're invisible characters like a tab. So let's take a look at that. So I'll run this, and you can see now that we've got tabs there. It doesn't really look that good, but I wanted to show you the tab anyway, because often it is very useful. Let's get the selection from the user. Let's say cout, enter your selection like this, and endler. In fact, let's have a flush there so they can enter the number on the same line as this. And let's get that input. So we've done this before lots of times. I'm going to say int, I'll just call it value, and cin value. Now we want to take various different actions depending on what the user enters. And of course we could use an if. We could say if value equals, let's say 5, then let's do a cout let's say, are you sure you want, no, let's not do that actually. Let's just say application quitting. Well, this is a bit artificial because we're not actually going to take any action here, we're just going to output some text, but it's just kind of a demo. So let's spell application correctly, and I'm going to run this and we'll check that it works. So if I run this now, if I enter like 4 or something, it doesn't say anything, nothing happens because I haven't told it to do anything. If I hit 4, if I hit 5, it's going to say application quitting. So we've seen this in the last tutorial. The only difference was we used strings there, but this works very well with integers as well. Now, supposing you want to take an action if something's true, but you want to take a different action if that thing isn't true. So you want to choose between 2 possible alternatives. Let's say, for example, here that we want to say that the user, let's say the user has like some kind of privileges, and certain users can't use these first 2 options. So we want to take one action if they enter a number that's less than 3, and if it's greater than or equal to 3, then we want to take a different action. So we can say if value, and I'm going to use less than here, less than 3, then we want to say cout insufficient privileges to use these menu options, like that. Endler. So this is, we read this as less than, and there's also greater than, which looks like that, but we want to use less than here. Now the way I remember this, well, when you first start programming, it's difficult to remember which way round this greater than or less than goes. And yeah, after you've been programming a while, you just kind of automatically know. But a good way to remember this is that the condition is true here if the smaller value is at the smaller end of this symbol and the bigger value is at the bigger end. So this arrow, it's got like a point to it, small end, and it's got a big end, the kind of prongs there. And this condition will evaluate to true if the small value is at the small end, if value is the smaller of the 2 values, and at the big end here we have 3. And that also applies to greater than. This condition will be true if value is greater and 3 was the smaller value. Let's use less than here. And let's see how that works. So this is pretty simple again. So if we enter a number greater than 3, let's say 6, nothing's going to happen. The value, this evaluates to false. So value is not less than 3. So value less than 3 is false. But if we enter a value that is less than 3, let's enter 1, then this condition evaluates to true, and it says insufficient privileges. It does this. Now, what if we want an alternative? So we want to say, okay, if the value is less than 3, we do this. But if it's equal to 3 or it's greater than 3, in other words, if this is false, we want to do something else. And we can do that just with an else. So immediately after the closing bracket of if, we're going to type else, open a new curly bracket like that, hit return. Eclipse has put the closing one in for me. And we can say cout privilege level sufficient. Kind of a strange thing to say in a program, but it's just a demo. So let's see, let's run that. And now if we enter 2, let's say, then insufficient privileges. If we enter 3, then it says privilege level sufficient. So this is now false, because value is not less than 3, it's equal to 3. So it does the else bit of the if. So one of these conditions is always going to execute. It's just a question of which one. Let's just try a bigger number than 3. We could enter anything really, like 66, and it will do this. So this is if else, and I want to draw your attention to the fact that I've indented the stuff between these curly brackets by a tab. So you could write it like this. Well, you could put the brackets anywhere and miss out tabs left, right and center. But it's really hard to read this, especially if you have multiple lines in here. So you should absolutely never do that. Wherever you have curly brackets, code between curly brackets, indent the code between them by a tab. And if you have curly brackets within curly brackets,